Now that we have a good understanding of Node packages and the fact that Node Package Manager allows us to manage our own packages as well as import and use third-party packages from other people in the Node community, we're now going to go ahead and set up a little project and show how we can import a Node package into our application, as well as set up an application to be a Node package. When we were learning about NPM, we looked at the Mongoose package, which is, of course, is a data access layer for connecting to a Mongo document database. Now, we're not going to dive too much into how we actually use Mongoose. We're just going to use it in order to show how we install a package and how we require or include a package into the code in our application or our package. So we're going to use this one here. So let's go ahead and let's set up a project. So I'm going to go ahead and open up Finder. Now, I always create a folder called dev, and then we are messing around showing some demos. So I'm going to use my sandbox, and then I'm going to create a folder here, and I am going to call it NPM demo. And of course, it's a brand new folder, so it's empty. Now we're going to use Visual Studio Code. We're going to open up Visual Studio Code, and it's going to load the last project that I had open. Close that, and now I am going to go ahead and open up that sandbox npm demo folder. So now we've got this folder open. It's ready to go in our Visual Studio Code. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to open up a terminal. And inside of the terminal, let's go ahead and clear what we've got in there from a different demo. And we are going to go ahead and I've already in the sandbox right here. And so we're going to go into our npm demo folder in the terminal. So we're going to do cd npm demo. And now if I do an ls, I should see that I am in npm demo. It is empty, which we also see here inside of our Visual Studio Code. Now, to set up our application so that it is a valid NPM package, just in case we want to redistribute it using NPM, we can go ahead and just say npm init. And that's to execute the initialization tool that NPM has built inside of it to help us set up our project. When we do that, it walks us through a step-by-step setup, and in the end generates what's called a package.json file that holds all of the metadata about our application. So we're going to go ahead and leave it as npm demo for the package name. We're going to leave it at version 1 because this is the first version of this application. For a description, we can leave it blank, or you can type down that this is a demo. Entry point is going to be the index.js. If you remember when we learned about the Node module system, the standard is that for your modules or your application, especially also for packages, index.js is the common practice of naming the entry point or the first script that gets executed in your package or your application. So we're going to leave it as index.js. We're not going to worry about tests right now. We don't have a Git repository, and we're not going to worry about keywords. And the license, we'll just leave it as MIT. Now it's going to show us the JSON or JavaScript object notation that is going to go into this package.json file inside of our project. We just look at it, make sure everything is what you expect, hit enter. And now if I clear my terminal and then I just list the contents, you'll see we now have a package.json. When we come over here to our Visual Studio Code, we now see that we have a package.json file inside of our project, and if we click on it, we will see that exact same JSON that was generated by the npm init utility. So this holds all of the metadata about our application. Really easy. We now have an application that is set up to be a package that could potentially be distributed on NPM by us to our peers in the Node development community. Now, setting up an application to really be an NPM package and be redistributable takes a lot more effort than what we've done right here. This is just to show us how we can kick off that process. We'll learn about creating NPM packages later on. Right now we're just going to stick to showing how we set up our application with NPM. And now we are going to demonstrate how we include into our application a third-party package. And that third-party package is going to be the Mongoose package that we were looking at. And here you can see the install method that we use for installing a package. And all it is npm install and then the name of the package. And we're going to do that in terminal inside of the root of our project. So let's go ahead and type npm install and then mongoose, the name of the package. When you hit enter, what's going to happen is npm is going to reach out to its online list of all the packages that it has available, and it's going to look for the package with the name that we provided. Once it finds that package, it's going to go ahead and add that package as a dependency inside of our package.json, and then it will download that package into our project. To show this, let's go ahead and look at this. We've got our package.json right here, and by running npm install mongoose, a new section was added to the JSON configuration inside of our package.json. And that new section are dependencies or third-party libraries or packages that our application relies on in order to effectively run. And here we can see mongoose is our first dependency in our application. Now when this happens, once a dependency is installed, we receive a new folder added to our project called node_modules. Now this is the folder in which NPM manages all of our dependencies. So that way they don't get mixed up with our own code. Here we're going to be creating our JavaScript files, but we don't want to mess with the modules that we downloaded. This folder is a folder that we should never update, edit, or delete. It is the folder that holds the third-party software that we don't want to mess with because somebody else already wrote it and tested it and we want to use it in our code. So all of our code stays out here. But so we can see how this works, we're going to go ahead and open the folder up and we're going to look for our dependency mongoose. The funny thing though is you will see a whole bunch of other folder names besides just mongoose. Here we can see our dependency mongoose, but if we open it up, we see that it itself is an application set up with a package.json. If we click on its package.json, we can go down and look at its dependencies. And you can see that a lot of these other folders in here are actual dependencies that were brought in by Mongoose. We see Bison here, we see Kareem, we see MongoDB, as well as many others. Now, what's happening here is that as people create their own packages and they add their own dependencies, just like we did when we created our package.json, they themselves also are going to have dependencies within their projects, meaning that Mongoose has its own set of dependencies listed inside of its package.json file right here. And therefore, once our dependency is installed once npm has installed our dependency mongoose, it will then look at its package.json, find all of its dependencies, and it will then install all of them inside of the node modules folder. Now you notice there are other folders in here like debug, which are not listed here inside as a dependency for mongoose. Well, that is because one of these packages most likely has debug as a dependency for itself. And we can look at that by opening up maybe one or two of these other projects and see if in their package.json they have dependencies. And we can see that MongoDB, it has the dependency of Bison. It also has a dependency of the require optional, which is right here, as well as the safe buffer. But those were not listed in Mongoose. So hopefully you see how that works. It's a tree of dependencies. It begins with your dependencies listed in your package.json. It installs that dependency. Then it looks at its dependencies and installs all of them. And then it looks at the dependencies for each of those dependencies and installs their dependencies. And it goes layer by layer until no more dependencies are found and all modules are installed. And then it's done. And now all of these modules can get to their dependencies, and our package can get to its dependency, which right now is just Mongoose. It's very similar to when we learned about modules within our application in that previous screencast. Now, how do we use Mongoose now that it's included in our project as a dependency? Well, we go ahead and we create our index.js, which is the entry point that we described here in our package.js. We said that index.js was our main file for executing this application. So inside of our index.js, we can actually do the exact same thing we do with modules, and we can require an entire package in just by using the require term or the require keyword. And we can say const mongoose equals require, and then instead of doing the dot slash, which implies that the file name after the dot slash is a local file to our project, instead of doing that, what we do is we actually just provide the name of the module that we're going to use, which is Mongoose, and then semicolon. Now that we've done this, we actually have imported the Mongoose package by importing Mongoose's index.js, which itself is a module. And we module.exports, and then it then exports the code that it has to provide us for connecting to a database, or adding and pushing and manipulating data that lives inside of a MongoDB database. Now, we're not going to go any deeper into that. Just remember that package.json helps NPM help Node manage all of the dependencies for our package or our application. And the Node modules folder holds all of those in order to keep them away from our code and keep it all separate and keep our project well organized.